Well, good Thursday morning to you. How are you doing this week? Things going well? Are you staying healthy? Are you getting better? I trust your week is going well for you. Well, today we're reading in First Chronicles 19 through 21, and a couple of different things I want to bring out. You remember the other day earlier in First Chronicles, our reading in First Chronicles, where David went to an advisor and said, I wanted to build a temple for the Lord, and Nathan, his advisor, said, go for it. But then Nathan, the spiritual advisor, had to come back to David and say, no, you're not to do this. Don't move forward and do this. And David listened to that advisor. He accepted that advice. And it was a good move. It was the thing to do. He listened to good advice, he followed good advice, and God blessed that good advice. Well, today we see just the opposite. We see a case where somebody listened to some advisors and that advice wasn't very good. We need to be careful whose advice we listen to. So here is this king of Ammon that died, and his son Nahash, he died, and his son Hanan ascended the throne. Now, King David of Israel, and Nahash, the king of Ammon, they got along famously. They had a good relationship with each other. They kept peace with one another. And so when Nahash died, David wanted to send condolences and a congratulatory message to Hanan, Nahash's son, the new king. So off these messengers go, sent from David to see Hanan, the new king of the Ammonites. Well, Hanan has some advisors that say to him, do you think David really has good intentions here? He doesn't have good intentions. He wants to see where you're vulnerable. He wants to see where your weaknesses are. These guys are really just spies. They've come to spy out the land, and they're going to go back to David, and next thing you know, we're going to get attacked by the Israelites. You just mark my words. And so Hanan listened to the advice of these advisors, and he ended up treating the messengers shamefully. He humiliated them. And the result was that David did launch a campaign against the Ammonites to retaliate for this shameful treatment of these messengers who came in peace and wanted only to offer peace and goodwill. So it's critical, I think, to listen to the right kind of advisors. So again, as I asked the other day when we closed, who are your counselors? To whom do you listen? What direction are they taking you? Are they taking you in a path that will deepen your relationship with God and a walk in a godly path? Or would they steer you away from that? Be careful the advisors you listen to. Well, the other thing I wanted to bring out in this passage that we read today has to do with David and in what we read in chapter 21. And so, in chapter 21, what's going on? David decides he wants to find out how many men of military age are there in his kingdom. So he calls Joab, the commander of his forces, and he says, I want you to go through the entire land of Israel from Dan to Beersheba and count everybody so I can know how many warriors I have at my disposal. How many, Joab objects to this, and rightly so, because this was prohibited. God prohibited this kind of thing. And Joab says, no, this is bad thing. This is a bad thing to do. Don't do this. And David, no, do it. He's adamant. You're going to do this. And off he goes. Now, see, here's the problem. David had achieved great success, and he came to a point in his rule as the king where it's like, everything turned out well for him. It came up roses, if you will. He had succeeded in squashing the rebellion of Absalom. He's just had good success in bringing the kingdom together and expanding the kingdom. It's become a prosperous kingdom and all the rest of this. He's known success in every battle that he's waged and so forth. And now he's kind of resting on his laurels. If you will, he's developed a sense of pride and an arrogance that insists that he can do what he wants to do regardless of good advice, godly advice to the contrary. And when we get to that point where we are so arrogant that we insist on having our way, even if that way is wrong, then we are quite vulnerable to Satan's assaults and the consequences that come from yielding to those assaults. And there were some significant consequences for David to deal with. As a result of that sin of numbering the people, God brought judgment upon the nation because of David. Thousands of people were affected. Thousands of people died, and their families grieved because of the sin of David. You might ask,